it's all gone to rack and ruin, you'd have to say. Alex, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, mate.
I mean, I harken back to the halcyon days of when things were run properly in this country. It seems a long time ago. And in Scotland, for you in particular, I presume it feels even longer.
Well, I occasionally look at transport projects that ain't built, health services that don't run, and economies that are now being crashed, finally, by the Bank of England. I mean, they've been at it for 2 years and they've finally managed it. And think, you know, maybe we should get some of the adults back in the room somewhere, sometime,
yes,
just to pull us out the mess. However, obviously, today's news is fantastic. I've been researching all night, as you can see from my blog background,
yes,
which is morning after the night before. And I finally discovered that Jude Bellingham has a Scottish granny.
Ah, that's very good news.
It's going to be convenient because our next game, the Scotland national team, are playing in Madrid in the big league, the European Championship, to get qualification. And Jude, of course, plays for Real Madrid, so he won't have to go far for the next game.
Well, of course, you would have to you'd have to convince him, though, wouldn't you?
Well, there'll be no problem with that. We'll give him first-team football every game, and Jude will be right there. This is a long tradition of signing up Anglo-Scots. I mean, for example, we've signed up Harry Maguire, as is very clear from recent events, and Jude will just be the next long line of splendid players with Scottish ancestry who move into the national team.
Well, I mean, Kevin O'Sullivan this morning said it was a magnificent performance by England, who scored all 4 goals. Harry Maguire's definitely the best of the lot.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Maguire's an icon of the Tartan Army. I mean, I didn't get to Hampden last night, or Hampden, as the Channel 4 enunciators.
No, you're joking.
But I didn't get to Hampden last night because I was still on my way back from Cyprus, you know, celebrating the big match. And I don't know about the wisdom of playing a friendly against England. I mean, you know, friendly against England is an oxymoron. It's like military intelligence.
Yes. You
can either have a friendly or you can play England. You can't have both. And I wasn't quite sure about the wisdom of taking our team back from the heat of Cyprus to the heat of Glasgow.
No, I mean, it was a magnificent sounding match, but it didn't quite live up to it on the pitch itself. But I was intrigued by something that was sent to me the other day, in fact, by our good mutual friend Donald McLeod, who's got a picture of Harry Kane and a picture of Andrew Robertson, plays for Liverpool, standing next to him. I don't know if you've seen this. One of these players has won the English title, the English FA Cup, the English League Cup, the English Community Shield, the Club World Cup, UEFA Super Cup and the UEFA Champions League. The other is in the England team. He's the captain.
Well, splendid stuff. And I was actually pleased that Robertson had a hand in Harry Maguire's goal on the basis he was redeeming himself from a very unusual slip-up from the Scotland captain. So that was one good thing that
Now, you've been complaining recently, though, that Channel 4's purchase of the England games has had a bit of a knock-on effect in Scotland because apparently you can't watch the Scotland games free to air, right?
Well, that's right. And, I mean, they're owned by Viaplay. They've got the rights. Now, Viaplay is a Swedish company, a big European broadcasting company. I mean, they've just announced they're evacuating the UK. Well, hardly surprising. Many other companies are doing that as well. But they're selling up in the UK, but they've still got the rights to the Scotland matches. And Channel 4, who, of course, as a public service broadcaster, stepped in to get the rights to the English games, and Channel 4 Wales, as a public sector broadcaster, stepped in to get the rights to the Welsh games. But there's been no sign whatsoever of Channel 4 stepping in to public service broadcast the rights to the Scotland games. Mind you, given the quality of their pre-match broadcast last night, quite frankly, I'm not sure we should be careful of what we wish. But there's a serious point, of course. You know, if public service broadcasters, like Channel 4, like the BBC, who get public money, don't sort of recognise that there's a bit of an anomaly here where Scotland fans, and only Scotland fans, have to pay to see our matches live, don't they sort of recognise that there might be a failing of public duty? I mean, what's the point of having public sector broadcasts if they don't broadcast to the public?
I mean, my view would be that public sector broadcast companies should not be given the money by the taxpayers to actually spend on commercial football matches. They shouldn't even be bidding for them at all. But if they are going to bid, then I would suggest that at least one of the conditions ought to be that the broadcast is countrywide, and by that I mean United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, with all of its different small parts of the jigsaw.
Well, I mean, we're talking about, you know, military intelligence as being an oxymoron, or Scotland-England friendly. I mean, BBC Scotland, now that's another oxymoron. The BBC regards itself as an outpost of the Imperial Realm in Scotland. I was interested, incidentally,
it didn't seem like that when I was there.
You know, but Harry Maguire was cheered to the echo, of course, as you would expect.
Yeah.
But the president of FIFA didn't get a good time, and neither did God Save the King. I noticed some blowback from various parties saying how disgraceful it is for the British national anthem to be booed. Well, there's two things about it. You know, it was being used as the English national anthem.
Yes.
And of course, it ain't even a British national anthem. In history, of course, it's a German national anthem. They've got more claim to it than Britain has.
Well, you might find an argument on that one, but I would agree with you that in sporting matters, it would be more sensible for the England team to have a different national anthem than the British national anthem. I disagree with you about it being German. It is the British national anthem.
We'll come to that in a second. But Jerusalem, which I know you sing every Sunday enthusiastically at the in your local parish cut down in the south east of England somewhere. But that's sing for England at the Commonwealth Games and gets a rousing reception. People even whistle during it to try to join in because they can't remember the words. But nonetheless, that would be a proper English national anthem. But on God Save the King, of course, it was composed to help George II, who, as I remember, was a wee German Geordie. He was a German king, composed by panicky Hanoverians as Bonnie Prince Charlie advanced through Derby. And of course, there is the verse that royal circles and establishment circles in London don't like to talk anymore, like God save Marshal Wade, rebellious Scots to crush.
Yes.
So you have in the verse of the so-called national anthem the idea of crushing Scots. That you shouldn't be too surprised if a few rebellious Scots decide to do it when it's.
But this has always been the problem with Scotland. There's too many rebellious Scots, you see. You know, and if they're just a bit more compliant with the general view that the United Kingdom is better together, then there'd be no need for that sort of talk, would there?
Well, you can see I'm bloodied and unbowed. I have my saltire tie on, despite the amazing performance, it has to be said, of Jude Bellingham last night.
Yes.
How that tie isn't in every English side. Well,
I know. Well, this is the thing. I mean, normally at these moments, we can sort of take solace with the Scottish rugby team at the World Cup, but I'm afraid they got horsed as well by South Africa. But I'm still rooting for them as best I can.
Yeah, well, these stories, come on, we're only halfway through these tragedies. They can easily turn into triumph. And of course, let's remember. I mean, let's get things into perspective. The Scotland national side are well in the way at qualification for Germany next year. They're in Category A, incidentally, of the European Nations League. England were relegated, of course. And, of course, that's one of the difficulties about that game last night. Because when teams from superior leagues, the Category A, take on teams from lower leagues, the Category B in England, then the underdogs, that's England in this case, often try a lot harder because the game means a lot more to them. That was one of the dangers that the SFA should have seen in the game last night. And incidentally, the SFA, apart from last night's game, which was really stupid of them to put on, and also quarrelling with the Scottish women's team, which is even more stupid. Right. But that apart, the Scottish Football Association have been paying a bit of a blinder over the last couple of years. So,
I mean, it was true, though, that in the one World Cup, which almost every country in the world qualified for, Scotland didn't. And I'm refusing to take the line from some who say that it was obviously why the reason they didn't want to qualify for the World Cup in Qatar was because there was no drink. And they didn't want to be the only World Cup they've been to where you couldn't have a beer.
You're missing the only statistic which really matters about World Cups, and that is that in 1974, the last World Cup in Germany in 1974, the only international side ever to go through a World Cup unbeaten and yet not win it were Scotland. Even Germany, who won it, were beaten in the initial stages. Yeah. But this is where unbeaten, they got knocked out.
But Alex, this is where it proves you can't use political terms like winning and losing for sport, because you can claim that you've had a victory in politics without winning anything. but you can't do it in football because, you know, it doesn't mean anything. Nobody believes you.
Well, because Alpha is still waiting for our first victory in politics, so that'll be coming along anytime soon.
Well, I mean, meanwhile, old Humza Useless, as we like to call him here, has been slicing and dicing his own party, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got this kind of thing. I mean, I'm trying to be as sympathetic as possible, but
I can see that.
Humza has already chopped Angus Brennan McNeill, who's an absolutely outstanding member of Parliament. You know, he's been MP since 2005 for the Western Isles, the Healing Year, as you pronounce it, of course.
Indeed.
And you know, he's a character, and he's well loved of his constituents. And he's a fearless advocate of Scottish independence, as well as
he is actually one of the. I think he is one of the good guys.
Yeah, a fluent Gaelic speaker and a genuine crofter, incidentally. I mean, the first genuine crofter in the House of Commons for about 100 years. Right. He's a really great guy to have in your side. But he's got the chop already. I think he's too fervent in his advocacy of independence, and he wouldn't shut up about the mess that the Scottish Government were making about ferries in his constituency and bearing down on the fishing community as well. So he's got chop. And now they're lining up a legendary name in Scottish nationalist politics, Fergus Ewing, the son of the great Winnie Ewing, who died sadly recently. He's been lined up to be disciplined this week. And I mean, look, I spent 20 years as leader of the Scottish National Party. I think most people say it's a reasonably successful 2 decades. You know, we started with 4 MPs and ended up with over 100 if you count the Scottish Parliament and the Westminster Parliament. Yeah. So it was a pretty successful time over a period of years. In my entire 20 years, I suspended 1 member of Parliament from the party, and he was convicted of assault in a criminal court. So, you know, to get to, 2 in a matter of months, which is what Humza's track record is at the present moment. I mean, you've got all these idiots round you, and Humza's got 1 or 2 idiots round him who tell you, look, you've got to be strong, you've got to be tough, you can't let them get away with it. I mean, the real leadership, you don't mind if people step out of line or have got something to say or are characters or defend their constituents, as Fergus Ewing and Angus MacNeill most certainly do. I mean, that adds up to the respect in which the party is held. You don't even an idea of how, the only conformity and silence you really get is in a graveyard. And exactly that's where the SNP will be heading if they don't stop. Don't stop stopping the good nationalists from the party. Well, they should be welcoming dissent, welcoming ideas coming forward, and real leaders, strong leaders, are not frightened of that. Only weak leaders are.
Yes, and of course the other time you get complete and utter silence is when you ask them any questions about the current police investigation, which of course brings me to asking you about it. I know you're probably going to say you can't comment on an ongoing police investigation, but I feel as if I need to ask you what's happening with the ongoing police investigation.
Well, I can comment on it. It's just that you're not able to say very much in proper terms. But I mean, I still think just let the police do their job, let them get on with it, and let them come to a conclusion, and stop trying to second guess them. I think clearly they've got a range of things to investigate, so we should just let them get on with the job.
But it's not an open-ended. It's not an open-ended contract. I think they need to start giving us some kind of timetable of events and whether or not by a certain stage of the year they're going to come out and actually say something.
Well, I'm not certain that the police work in that terms. I mean, there's been some suggestion that the Crown Office have become political. I mean, in fact, I made it over the last few years, and let's hope that's being eradicated from the Crown Office with the departure of the Crown agent last year. I mean, he was a person who unfortunately seemed to be influenced by politics. But the police, by and large, in Scotland have been regarded as above and beyond political influence, and that's a good thing. And if you've got a police force which is above and beyond political influence, then you should just let them get on with the job in their own timetable, and they'll be methodically working their way through a case. They won't be influenced even by the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. They'll be influenced and go where the evidence leads them, and that's how it should